About half a year ago, I was on my way back from visiting my girlfriend's place. It was already around 2 a.m., the weather was gloomy, and the road that led to my house went past an old orphanage that had been abandoned for some time. It was there that I heard the sound of children crying. Despite feeling a bit intoxicated, I didn't feel frightened. Rather, I was moved by a strong urge to help the child and find out what was causing the distress. I entered the abandoned building, where remnants of old children's toys and broken furniture lay scattered about, left behind by homeless individuals. The crying continued to echo throughout the building. I searched every corner of the structure, but found no one. However, the sound persisted. As I was about to leave, I noticed a staircase leading up to the second floor. Beneath it was a door, and the sound of crying emanated from behind it. Despite my attempts to open the door, it remained locked. So I scoured the building for a suitable tool and found a pipe, which I used to break the lock. Upon entering the room, I was greeted by a damp and moldy environment. I directed the light from my phone towards a small mirror in the corner of the room, which seemed to be the source of the crying. As I drew closer, the noise suddenly ceased. However, upon examining the mirror more closely, I saw that a ladder-shaped figure had been etched onto its surface using either a marker or paint. The situation became increasingly eerie, and I also heard whispers that were indiscernible. Consequently, I decided to depart from the orphanage. As I left, I could distinctly hear cries for help coming from inside. As a cab turned onto my street, I darted out and flagged it down. The driver immediately inquired about the screams, having heard them as well. Sensing danger, I urged him to accelerate. As we sped away, my nerves gradually settled until I caught sight of a worn-out ladder painted on my side view mirror. I asked the driver if he saw it too, but he shook his head. As we drove on, the ladder became increasingly visible, accompanied by muffled whispers. I confided in the driver, who reacted with alarm and demanded that I leave the car. Although I complied, I remained petrified and shaken by the experience. As morning dawned, I awoke to a pounding headache and a flood of memories from the previous night. Though I dreaded facing the mirror in the bathroom, I mustered the courage to do so. To my relief, there was nothing amiss. Emboldened, I shared my misadventure with my friends, who found it amusing. Over time, I too began to see the humor in the situation. However, my levity was short-lived. The following night, after returning from a late-night game of bowling, I ventured into the bathroom to wash up. Once again, the faint whispers returned, accompanied by the eerie appearance of a ladder on the mirror. Fleeing in terror, I sought refuge in my parents' home and recounted the chilling events of the previous night. To help me sleep, they provided me with pills that eventually lulled me into a peaceful slumber. Upon awakening, everything appeared normal. However, my parents dismissed my claims, and for the next 3 days, I grappled with the sight of a ladder on the mirror and the sound of muffled cries that only I seemed to hear. I was consumed with anxiety and convinced that I was losing my mind. Desperate for answers, my parents brought me to a psychiatrist who recommended further examination at a clinic. Though nothing unusual occurred during my stay, the experience left me with an irrational fear of mirrors. After my examination, I was discharged from the clinic with a diagnosis of nervous exhaustion. Upon returning home, I was greeted by the haunting whispers once more. In an attempt to validate my experience, I implored my father to stand beside me in front of the mirror, hoping that he too would witness the strange occurrences. As we stood together for 15 minutes, he remained unaware of anything amiss, while I watched in horror as the ladder materialized and gradually descended towards the bottom edge of the mirror. The whispers grew louder and more intense, eventually escalating into a cry for help. With a sudden and terrifying crash, the mirror shattered, raining shards of glass upon my father and me, cutting our faces in the process. My father was finally jolted into belief and began taking me to various spiritual practitioners, including temples, churches, gypsies, and fortune tellers. In a desperate attempt to break the curse, I was even baptized anew. Yet despite our efforts, the haunting continued. Every mirror in our apartment had been shattered, and several psychics claimed that a potent and inexplicable curse had been placed upon me. Their attempts to remove it proved futile, leaving me feeling hopeless and helpless. I yearned to reclaim my former life, but so far, no solution had presented itself, and I remained trapped in a terrifying and mysterious world.